Hi everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel where I talk about all things to do with plants. Today I wanted to talk you through some tips and tricks and things I wish I had known at the beginning of my indoor plant collection. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, please just keep watching. Alright, so first up, I guess it's a good idea for me to quickly go through a little bit about my indoor houseplant experience. So I definitely have tried to get into houseplants a couple of times over the years. I would buy a random plant that looked pretty, put it up on a shelf, probably way too far from any sort of light source, forget that it needed watered, watched it die, and just sort of figured I had a black thumb. Until about a year ago when I moved into this townhouse and I realised the abundant light opportunities in here and decided just to give it a go. As you can see, my collection has definitely grown. I've got around 50 or so houseplants. I will definitely do a houseplant tour. I'm just waiting on a few more babies from my prop box to grow before I can do that. But yeah, that's pretty much a brief history on everything I know. So with that said, I'm just going to jump into my tips and tricks. So with that being said, here's tip one. Tip one is quite simply, don't buy all the houseplants at once. Don't buy all the houseplants at once and don't overwhelm yourself. It can be really tempting when you're a beginner collector to pop down to your local Bunnings, or sometimes even Coles and Woolies have them, and just pick up whatever looks really pretty. I take them home, you pop them all down and you start to do a little bit of research. You do some Googling, you check out a book, and you feel completely and utterly overwhelmed. So let's not start that way, okay? Let's start simple. As they like to say, there's a term in business, KISS, the KISS method. Keep it simple, and then you can interchange it with shithead or sweetheart or whatever you want, depending on how safe you need to keep your interactions. Yeah, so keep it simple. Stick to some basic plants, stick to something like, and keep it simple at the beginning. Start off with 2 or 3 basic plants, look after them, see how they go, and then, you know, once you've worked out their care and what they need, then you can look at increasing your collection a little bit more. But for first, just start simple. Tip number 2, start with some easy beginner plants. Again, you could do some research on this, or you could just listen to what I'm about to tell you. So I highly recommend starting off with, you know, like I said, 2 or 3 plants and keep them simple plants. So for me, I would personally recommend a devil's ivy, such as a classic green and yellow, you know, devil's ivy, or a marble queen if you prefer something variegated. These are easy plants, these are fast going plants, these are beautiful plants. You can have them draped down, you can have them trellised up. I'll include a couple of shots, one of them where I've got the devil's ivy sort of trailing down my window, and another one where and I'll include a second shot where I've got the marble queen on a trellis. It's growing beautifully up there and they both look amazing. If you do grow those plants up a trellis, the leaves will generally get a little bit bigger, but they both look beautiful. You don't want to start off getting an expensive plant, you're just adding more stress to yourself, and you don't need to do that. Especially in 2020, I mean, we have more than enough to worry about without worrying about our plants. The next 2 that I recommend them just a little bit less, only because they're slower growers. And I find that slower growers, they're beautiful, but they're a little less rewarding. The first one is the classic mother-in-law's tongue, or snake plant, was previously called, it's just changed its name, but snake plant, mother-in-law's tongue, you're good to go. They're the staple of any office. They're so simple. Plant, again, picture here. They're really cool. They're really geometric, especially when they sort of grow a bit more. They've got like a really interesting pattern to them. You can get a ZZ Raven, which is like a black or darker form of it, but they're ridiculously overpriced at the moment. So I just stick to a classic ZZ. These ZZs are easy. Their literal slogan is that they thrive off neglect. So tip number 3, don't repot your plant straight away. So it can be really tempting when you first get a plant and bring it home to repot it. Reason being, you've already stressed your plant out by changing its environment from probably a very optimal nursery to your home. You don't want to add extra stress by also changing the soil that it lives in. So leave it for at least 2 weeks, and then if you really need to, you can repot it. I would recommend though in general, if you can, hold out for spring or early summer. Just this way, when you repot it, the roots are going to have a lot extra energy because of that extra sunlight and warmth to really regrow and re-establish itself. Tip number 4 is some boring essentials you're going to need. Now, it can be really tempting at the beginning to spend all of your dollary dues on plants. I really don't know why I keep saying dollary dues, but apparently it's a thing now. I guess it's a good thing it's an Australian video. But yeah, it can be really tempting to spend all your dollary dues on plants and overlook some basics, but it will make your plant having experience that much easier. So the first thing that I really highly recommend is a moisture meter. Again, I'll pop in some lovely B-roll that I've learned how to make of how to use it. But effectively, it just tells you whether your plant is dry, moist, or wet, so that you can, make sure you're not over or under watering your plant. The real benefit is because the stick is so long, you can really get deep down to the roots and get a really accurate reading. Because I find the old housewives trick of sticking your finger in down to your knuckle really only gives you an idea of what's happening on the top surface, and you may end up accidentally overwatering your plants if you purely rely on that. So 100%, they're only about $10. I'll link some below. I got mine off at Bunnings pre-lockdown. The next thing would be some pest spray. Now, one thing you'll probably notice when you bring home your plants is some little black bugs that sort of fly around your plant. They're not going to harm the plant, they're not going to harm you, although apparently they can bite some people. They've never bitten me, but they totally bit a colleague when I used to have a houseplant at work. Sorry. But get yourself, there are all kinds of methods for controlling gnats. This to me is the best, so I'm definitely not sponsored, although that would be awesome as a beginner YouTuber. The Rich Grown naturally based fruit fly spray. It's about $10 or $12 or so from Bunnings. Again, if I can, I'll link it below. It's garlic based, so it is pretty stinky, but it is very natural. I actually don't mind the smell, and I've noticed sometimes I'll have fruit fly protected my whole upstairs, and my husband will come upstairs thinking that I'm cooking something delicious for him, only to disappoint him. So, it's kind of a dual effect. It's a little bit of a prank on your housemate's husband, your whatnots. And the last sort of boring essential I would recommend would be some soil. Now, it can be tempting, again, to save those dollary dues and get yourself some cheap indoor potting mix, but a lot of those really don't drain very well. They can lead to root rot. It's just not ideal. The one that I really like, if you really want to start basic, is the Osmocote Premium Indoor Potting Mix. Comes in a silver bag. I think it's like $13. Again, if I can, I'll link it below. I would, however, suggest spending a few extra dollars and picking up the cactus mix or a cactus and mix the two together, like 50-50 or something like that. You can just eyeball it, but basically the cactus mix will add some extra drainage, keep it light and airy, and again help prevent from root rot. Tip number 5 is, again, a pretty straightforward one. Don't buy rescue plants at the beginning, please. Rescue plants or plants that are on clearance, if you're experienced, they can be a great way to get a good plant for cheap if you know how to bring it back to health. But, quite often a beginner will be tempted because it's an interesting looking plant at a price point they might not have been able to afford. But you really are just setting yourself up for a little bit of trouble. So really just stick to healthy, well-established plants, at least at the beginning. Again, it comes back to that keep it simple, sweetheart method. You really don't want to overwhelm yourself. Again, life in 2020, it's overwhelming as shit. Don't add more. Tip number 6, so lighting, bright indirect light. So you might be able to tell, you might not, but right to the right of me is my giant window that is west facing. So all these plants behind me get a fair bit of bright indirect light. The Monstera, I'm giving him some direct light, just because he's a bit of an underachiever. You're doing really well now. Don't put them directly in front of the window. You'll burn them. Hence why my Monstera is a little bit sad. He definitely had some burny leaves last summer. I'm in bright indirect light, a little bit away from the window, but make sure they are near a window. That's going to be good for majority of your beginner plants. Again, there's calatheas and things like that, which are quite different, but I'm really pleased. Just stay the frick away from calatheas at the beginning. I know they're so beautiful, but they're tricky. Don't do it. And the last one is simply watering. So watering is something that you would think would be pretty straightforward, but there are quite a few different methods and a few different reasons that you would try some different things. First up, we've got your classic, just stick your plant in the sink, give it lukewarm water, like so room temperature. You really don't want to go too cold or too warm. Again, do you like jumping in a really cold shower? If you do, you're a bit weird. Your plants don't like it, okay? Lukewarm water, you know, put a little bit in it first, let that settle, and then make sure you water it till you see the water run through down the sink. As depicted in, again, my B-roll. Can you tell I'm pretty freaking proud of myself for figuring this one out. Then you've got bottom watering, so I'll show a clip of that as well. That's basically where you pop your plants in a container. You can either pop them in a container like I have, or you can, for example, behind me, I've got like a plastic tray that something dropped by pick it. So you could, you know, fill up a plastic tray, pop your plant in there and give it a watering that way. Basically, that works by capillary action. So what happens is the roots at the bottom of the plant will reach down for that water, suck up what they need, and, you know, get a drink. The main pros to bottom watering is, the biggest one that I found, and the reason a lot of people do it, is again gnat prevention. So it keeps the top of the soil nice and dry. Generally, the water doesn't sort of reach up there, therefore preventing creating less of an attractive sort of situation for the gnats. So it can be really handy for that, and it can also, they say that it can make the roots grow stronger, basically because they're sort of creating that capillary action. They're growing down and growing stronger in order to get their water. I don't know yet. It's not something I've personally tried, but apparently it can be a good pro. The last option for your bigger plants is purely just pop them in the shower. Again, lukewarm, room temperature water. We don't want to shock the plants. Do you like getting into a cold shower? You probably don't. Probably slightly less pressure than I would have done here. You don't really want the leaves to flop about as dramatically as mine are, but I have a finicky shower. So yeah, just give your plants a shower. Bonus points is you can leave them in there for a couple of hours to drip dry, and then you can pop them back in your spot. It also helps clean the leaves, so it can be really good pest prevention to clean your leaves and make sure that, you know, nothing can really stay on there. So that's another pro of putting them in a sink or putting them in the shower. You can run the water over the leaves as well and keep them clean that way. So that's pretty much all of my beginner tips. I really hope that this helped. If you do have any questions, comments, anything like that, any particular plants that you need help with, pop the details in the comments below and I'll see what I can do. Please like, comment and subscribe. That way every Thursday when I upload a video, you'll get to see. I've got a lot of interesting topics that I'm really working on at the moment, including my grow box with progress updates, so you can see how that grows over a couple of months. Yeah, just let me know too if there's any other topics or anything that you'd be interested in. Thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed. Have a great day. Bye.